approaching. 1 minute. All systems nominal.
Welcome to the 4th episode of Returning to Base, a Mechwarrior Living Legends podcast. If you're looking for the episode with community questions, you'll have to wait till next week. They're not on this episode. One of our guests today is Rick the Stick.
Hello.
Our other guest today is Rick Hunter.
Hi.
Rick, you manage one of, or several of, the most popular servers on Mechwarrior Living Legends.
Yeah, together with Schlopper and myself, we years now that we've been running the servers, and pretty much keeping them up 24/7, and hopefully giving the players a good platform to play on.
Well, thank you so much for your hard work, because this game would not be what it is without you.
It's a team effort with everybody, so we're just one part of it. You're welcome.
And Rick the Stick, what sort of things do you do for Mechwarrior Living Legends?
Well, I've recently joined the dev team for Mechwarrior Living Legends proper, but I suppose my primary contribution thus far has been Stick Stats Stored, which aggregates some player stats based on data given to me by the 12th VR server admin, Rick Hunter.
Rick Hunter, such a great guy. So, give us an interesting statistic. What sort of things occur in Living Legends?
Well, there are a few things that I collect on Stick Stats. For example, I'm able to tell who buys the most variety in assets, who's played the most assets total out of all those in Legends, and right now that's actually you, Kentax.
What?
Yep, you have taken 357 out of the 500 some odd assets in the game, and your favorite is evidently the APC Prime, and I'm not going to say anything more about that. It's a little shameful if you ask me, but we can keep track of all things like assets you haven't taken, whether you take the most mechs, wheeled vehicles, ASF, etc. In addition, I keep track of some stats. Like I said, I keep track of who buys the most variety in assets, who spent the most C-Bells, and which mechs are most popular.
So I must let you know, I have a penchant for buying APCs, especially on Dune, and hiding them around the side forward bases, so that when the enemy captures them and then inevitably leaves, I can just spawn right next to them and take the bases back.
That doesn't surprise me. It sounds like exactly what somebody who takes a lot of APCs would do.
So can you tell me what mech is the most popular overall?
So right now, the most popular mech is the Raven B. It's a starter mech. Actually, it's one of the first things you're able to buy. It's got 3 small pulse lasers and an LBX-10, but it also has a full equipment suite. It's got LAMs, C3, Beagle App Probe, and Geckum. So it's a really powerful electronic warfare mech available right at the start. My data goes back until April of this year, and so far 2,193 of them have been purchased.
That is a lot of Raven Bs.
It is so much LBX on the field, but can't complain about C3.
It's kind of interesting that laser anti-missile systems, they're not that effective in the early game. So, do you think that this mech is being purchased not just in the early game, but maybe all game long, or what do you think?
I've certainly seen it pop up in late game, especially as a starter mech for late joins of the C3, and it tends to pop up as a good C-bill farm when you're late into the game. So somebody who joins halfway through the match, I've seen lots and lots of vets who will occasionally take them as their first mech and promptly hop into something utterly devastating in the heavy and assault range of assets.
So what's the most popular medium mech?
So the most popular medium mech right now is the Camaro D. It has Beagle Active Probe, enhanced optics, a T-Bolt 10, a heavy machine gun, and 5 medium lasers. It outstrips almost all of the other medium mech purchases by almost half, except for the Bushwhacker C, which remains ever popular.
Which one's the Bushwhacker C?
The Bushwhacker C is the first Bushwhacker that comes available. It's got a large pulse laser, 2 MRM-10s, a UAC-10, and no extra equipment. But it is the first one to become available.
It's kind of interesting how those two mechs are way up there. You've got the Chimera, which that particular Chimera is one of the best that's available. It's point and click with those lasers, and the Thunderbolt is certainly pretty easy to use, and the Beagle Active Probe makes it lock on just so quickly. It's a very practical mech, and the heavy machine gun can almost be ignored, but you can use it. It's pretty decent against battle armor and things like that. The Camaro Delta is one of the only mechs designed by committee on the Living Legends roster. I can't remember exactly how many of the developers were involved in creating it, but it's a long list, probably 6 or 7 different people all contributed some sort of ideas involving its creation.
That's a solid mech.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard the thing all over and over again, the mantra, don't design things by committee, it's bad. But in this case, we actually came up with something that was maybe a little too good.
Find that with it's pinpoint accuracy. It's really good.
So, but that Chimera is an interesting juxtaposition to the that Bushwhacker, because while the Bushwhacker with the MRMs can be used to great effect, it's a little bit of a noob trap, I've found. Has that been your experience as well?
I agree with you, not only from my own play experience, but from what I've heard. I usually anytime you bring up the Bushwhacker C, it'll immediately be met with cries of noob trap, which is true for the last 2 of the 5 most popular medium mechs, the Uziel F and the Chimera A. The Uziel F is the LRM Uziel, and the Chimera A is the ELRM Chimera, and both of which have been equally castigated as being noob traps.
So I know my opinions on LRM boats, but do you suppose that LRMs are just like a deficient weapon system for noobs?
At least when I started playing out, I was very attracted to LRMs because, like everyone, I don't enjoy dying. Because not only are you a net ticket loss for your team when you do, oftentimes, especially as a new player, but it just doesn't feel good to die. And LRMs offer you to be able to sit back and pump ordnance into the enemy, but it does certainly encourage behavior that's not helpful in the most popular Mechwarrior Living Legends game mode, terrain control, which if you just sit back and LRM the enemy to death, you might rack up points for yourself, but oftentimes you won't rack up as many points for your team because you're not getting on points, or if you're working just by yourself, you're not supporting your teammates while they get on points. So they encourage a playstyle that maybe isn't appropriate for at least terrain control. Perhaps it works better in Team Solaris Arena, but I haven't seen very much Team Solaris Arena on a full population nights.
Yeah, no kidding. It's been a long time since that was the dominant playstyle. What's the most popular heavy mech?
It is the Marauder C, which is especially interesting because the Marauder was introduced this summer in this summer's update. I forget the version number, but my data goes back till April, and even though it started only started out about halfway through my data, the Marauder comes in first and third places for the top 5 heavy mechs. The most popular one is the UAC-20, 6 medium laser, and 2 SRM-6 Marauder, the Marauder C. And the third most popular heavy mech, of course, is the Marauder E, which is the Improved Heavy Gauss Marauder.
I do know, from what I've heard, that the Marauder will be receiving a chassis price increase. So I wonder how that will affect how likely it's purchased, or how often it's purchased.
I'm assuming it's going to bring the number down somewhat, but looking at the top buyers for at least the Marauder C chassis, I don't think that they're the players who buy the most Marauder Cs, at least, are generally high scorers on the team. So it's not going to take them it's not going to make it much more difficult for them to get into a Marauder. But that's just my opinion.
So what other heavy mechs are popular?
The Vulture A is the second most popular heavy mech. It is, of course, the 2X Clan Gauss rifle and 2 SRM-2 Vulture variant. It's the bane of a lot of people's existence, but it is ever popular. It's got almost as many purchases as the Marauder C. It only comes in 23 buys behind, but it's got a 300-point lead on the fourth most popular heavy mech, which is the Thanatos A, which is the Heavy Gauss Thanatos.
So it seems between the Heavy Gauss, Improved Heavy Gauss Marauder, the Heavy Gauss Thanatos, and the Gauss Vulture, that Gauss-type weapons are pretty popular.
Absolutely, because the fifth place top heavy mech is the Rifleman C, which carries 2 light Gauss rifles. So evidently maybe, and I don't have any way to tell you this for sure, that the preferred weapon system in a heavy mech tends to be Gauss rifles of various varieties. I am working on that. It'll be in stick stats eventually. Right now, weapons and equipment are just kind of hacked in, but I want to get them in there just as well as I've got the mechs so that I can display that data as well on my site.
Where does the Uller with Gauss show up?
That actually does not show up in the top 5 mechs. Which variant of the Uller is that? Is that the Uller D?
It might be
D
the Bravo.
has?
Let me check.
The Bravo is the UAC-20, and the Bravo appears. See, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12, 13. Looks like the Uller Bravo is the 13th most popular overall. If I restrict that to...
It's the Alpha is the one with the Gauss.
The Alpha. The Alpha does not appear in the top 25, actually.
Wow.
Let me restrict by... Although that's overall, so let me restrict by only light mechs and see if I can suss it out. Looks like the Uller Alpha with the Gauss rifle is the 23rd most popular light mech. It comes in above the Owens Echo, which is the MRM Owens, and the Raven D, which has a large laser, 3 medium lasers, and a NARC.
So not super popular, but definitely popular.
It is definitely popular. I mean, how many light mechs are in the game? Is it
I have a total of 78 light mechs to choose from.
okay? Yeah, that's not too shabby.
My guess with the Gauss assets is that the ones that are the most popular are those that sport at least decent backup weapons or have a high maneuverability.
I could believe that, but especially in the case of the Cougar Alpha, its Gauss arm is probably extremely prone to being shot off, especially early in the game, because people likely know to look out for that and arm it immediately. As losing just that lightly armored arm would be a pretty high loss of DPS for the enemy team with
There
very
are
little effort.
there are a lot of different Ulers that are there where their arms are good targets, such as the medium pulse laser Uller, the ultra autocannon 20 Uller, even the heavy large laser Uller shooting off the arms can be a good strategy.
This is why I take the Uller Prime, because even when you lose both your arms, you've still got a pretty formidable set of weapons left there.
Yeah, that used
I'm
to be my
constantly fighting Lico for who buys the most of those.
the Uller Prime used to be my go-to several versions back.
I've started trying to branch out, but I've definitely bought way more than I should have. Oh, it's at 101 total buys for me, compared to Lico's 34. I throw Euler Primes almost as much as Rask.
Yeah, my among the assets that I actually use for combat, the Mithras Bravo is my favorite, and I bet you can guess why.
Let's see, what's on the Mithras Bravo?
2 heavy small lasers, 1 medium heavy laser, and 2 ATM 3s. It's 2 HE ATM 3s.
Goodness gracious. Yeah, I can see why you would like that. I'm constantly finding assets that I didn't know how thoroughly terrifying they were.
It also
And
has a
that is
PDS.
one of them. Yes, I just saw that. I pulled it up just now.
It's honestly, if I could pick any Mithras to be tier 2 instead of being tier 1 like all the rest of the Mithrases, that's the one I'd pick, because it's a money printer if you can get into the right kind of combat.
I can see why.
Another statistics thing that I was involved with recently was what do you call that? On the wiki, the stats for travel speed, for top speed, those sorts of things were not accurate for all the tanks. And so now those are listed properly. So we had the Harasser. The Harasser Gulf was not listed properly. Its top speed is higher due to having a bigger engine. How often does the Harasser G show up?
So the Harasser G has been bought only a total of 185 times in the data that I have. Your typical hovercraft pilots are generally to blame for it. Poplug is the first most active buyer. He's got 48. Blood Raven and Plotting Raccoon are tied at 17. And yourself and General Awkwardly are tied at 7, along with SJ Joey. So it doesn't pop up super often compared to some hovers, I'd say.
I think the big problem with it is it's not a starter asset.
Yeah, I would agree.
But yeah, I usually end up asking, oh yeah, give me 2K, and so somebody gives me 2K, and then I can afford that harasser. But then I forget to buy ammo. Not usually a problem because I usually die too fast in that harasser. It's very prone to flipping.
I mean, that's the prime reason I tend not to take hovers, is I really don't enjoy getting upside down.
The fast Harasser, you definitely have to take it easy off of jumps and things like that, and let off the accelerator pretty regularly. It on the flat, it can go faster than just about anything else in the game. It drives faster than the VTOLs.
Mercy.
Yeah, it tops out around 216 kilometers per hour, 50, almost 60 kilometers per hour faster than the regular Harasser. So then, besides the Harasser, another fast asset is the Rommel. It's the Rommel Echo, which has 2 ER small lasers, 1 heavy PPC, 1 Streak SRM-6, and 9 tons of armor. How often does that one show up?
So it has a total of 154 purchases. Obviously, it doesn't tend to show up until later game, being Tier 9 with a cost of 69,700 C-bills. It pops up relatively often for a late game asset. It's for a Tier 2 asset like the Harasser Golf, which we just talked about. A similar number of purchases is pretty low, but considering that this is a late game asset, I'd say people tend to favor it, and I certainly run into it a lot when I'm playing the HPPC. This is not fun.
How does it compare to the other Rommels?
The Rommel Prime has more purchases at 210 purchases. The Rommel A, which is the Thumper, has 333. I would assume it's the most popular. The Rommel B has only 89. The Rommel C has a similar number to the Rommel Echo with 131. That's the UAC-20 Rommel. The Rommel Delta has almost the exact same number at 152. That's an LBX-20, as well as Geckum, an SRM-6, and 2 small pulse lasers. The Rommel Foxtrot is the H-Gauss Rommel, and it is actually the most popular Rommel with 714 purchases. It beats even the Thumper.
Even though you can get a cheaper Hollander.
You can get a cheaper Hollander, but I'm assuming it's more armored than the Hollander might be.
Yeah, the Hollander has only 6.5 tons of armor, and that compares to the 9 tons of armor for the Rommel. Speed-wise, the regular Rommel runs at 84 kilometers per hour, and the Hollander, when masking, runs at about 120, but it's not sustainable. It probably maxes out on most maps around 100 kilometers an hour. So it's not too much faster than the Rommel. Yeah, that makes sense that people use the H-Gauss Rommel. So next up is the Partisan Foxtrot. The Partisan Foxtrot also runs a fusion engine, and it goes at 76 kilometers per hour, which is 16 kilometers per hour faster than a regular Partisan. It's equipped with a rotary autocannon 5 and 3 medium X-pulse lasers. It has 2 more tons of armor than most Partisans, on par with the Partisan Prime. So how often does that show up?
288 total purchases over time. They're relatively spread out among players, though. The top few purchases per player are 14, 11, 11, 11, 9, 8, and 8, and it goes on. You're actually number 3 on the purchase list for this one, Kentax. You pop up a lot in some of these top buyer lists.
I think I play the game
You've got quite
a lot.
a diverse list, I think, Kentax, right?
I was wrong about that when I told him that he was leading the list. He is now in 3rd place behind General Awkwardly, who's in 2nd, and of course Mechwarrior leads in 1st, but you kind of have to write that stat off.
Yeah, who could ever beat Mechwarrior?
No one. Once we finally get a way to rank players globally in their ticket efficiency or skill or however that measure comes out, I almost Warrior will still be the best player in the game.
Yeah, so the Partisan Foxtrot, I've actually been taking it instead of the Partisan Bravo. The Partisan Bravo has been my go-to for a long time, and I'm finding that I often need the added mobility from getting from post to post. That the Partisan Bravo just is too slow.
We actually can see that in some of the purchase data. The Partisan Bravo is a more popular asset with 958 total purchases, and you're actually number 2 on that list with 46 purchases, whereas the Partisan F, I believe, is in 3rd place relative to its other chassis variants.
Partisan Bravo is a fun tank to play, though.
Oh, heck yes. Although I hate that moment whenever I forget to manually reload. Like when I get down to, say...
Yeah, just on the last few shots in the clip, yeah.
Yeah, if there's like 30 shots left, then whatever, I'll fire through it. But if there's 10 or 15, then I'll force reload by hitting the end key. But I sometimes don't notice, and those reloads can come at really inopportune times.
Guilty.
Okay, so we did the Rommel, the Partisan. There's also a Mithras. There's a Mithras, and instead of being faster than other Mithrases, it's actually slower than other Mithrases. And this is the Mithras Echo, and it's equipped with 1 Clan Ultra Autocannon 10 and 2 machine guns. How often does that one show up?
So the Mithras Echo is the 3rd most popular Mithras. It's got 416 purchases, which is almost double the next most popular, which is the Mithras Prime. It comes in behind the Mithras Bravo and the Mithras Golf. Those are the heavy, medium, laser, and Hag Mithrases, respectively.
I've always found it difficult to use the Ultra Autocannon 10 Mithras just because it takes too long to deal its damage, because the Ultra Autocannon 10 keeps overheating and you have to wait for it to cool down, even if you don't get it all the way to the red line.
Yeah, arguably the Hag 21 is going to be a little bit easier to play with too.
So yeah, let's pick on some players. Who are some players that we can insult or compliment? I mean,
well, we've got some players who pop up in a few of the overall stats. We can see, of course, that Kentax, you've spent by almost 10 million C-Bells, the most of any player who's not playing as Mechwarrior, at 122 million C-Bells. So you're one of the most expensive. The next closest person is only 10 million behind you. The most recently seen, I should actually put in who hasn't been seen in the longest. That would be a fun way to pick on some players. But the usual people that you normally see pop up in kind of the most recent, we've got people like Autumn Celery, who I believe is relatively new to the community, Plotting Raccoon, Gniter, who's another newer player. Saber 15 makes pretty regular appearances these days. The Clan Jade Falcon shows up a lot, as well as the Clan Smoke Foxes. They show up pretty frequently as well here these days. Sea Foxes, that's my bad.
who hasn't been seen in a long time? I was sort of expecting Invictus to be a little higher up on the variety and assets, since he's always all about the variants. That's one of the big things that he is in charge of, besides working with textures and helping out the modelers and stuff like that.
So Invictus does come in at number 7, but he has a solid 80 less assets purchased than you do, and a handful less, a handful larger gap between him and our second place General Awkwardly. However, some bias could be introduced to that because the data from 12VR servers only comes from matches that have enough players and run for a sufficient time. So perhaps he shows up in smaller population games and plays through the asset list a little more fully.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I know some players, certainly when there's fewer players on the server, will just pick random things instead of power gaming.
It's fun though, using different assets and using the stats and saying, well, let's see, I haven't tried this one yet, or seeing a popular mech that you normally wouldn't go to, browse it, and then giving that a shot and finding a new favorite variant. Like in Phlegeton, a couple of nights ago, I took the MK2 with the 4 UAC-5s and the ATM-9s and a bunch of machine guns. I forgot the name of the variant. That was surprisingly effective there. Well, it's a relatively easy mech to pilot, so...
And one thing that was kind of sad for me to see, at least, I don't think they're the most up-to-date stats, but they're at least within the last year, was that the Thanatos Delta, which was formerly one of the most powerful and most popular Thanatoses, is now one of, I believe, the second least popular Thanatos.
Surprising, because it's still a very effective one.
I
You
think
really have to land your shots on side torsos. I mean, it'll arguably wreck a Timberwolf if you have precise aim. But yeah, I'm surprised that it's not up there.
Especially considering the fact that in the past, when it was more popular, it was intentionally undertonned. You just couldn't even, there were 3 tons on it that were, for whatever reason, not available. You could not include the extra, it only came with 1 extra ton instead of 3 extra tons for ammo that it has now.
Yeah, that would definitely need a lot more limiting. But now it's it's a solid mech. I don't use it often, but it can definitely be really good, especially in city fights and such.
Oh yeah. I'm guessing that one of the limiting factors for it right now is that there are so many other good heavy mechs to choose from.
Yep.
Back in its heyday, it was one of the only good, like really good, Intersphere brawlers. The Avatar didn't have very good variants back then. Well, it wasn't just the variants, but the weapon to engine ratio was off, making it rather inefficient.
Yeah, well, now they sped it up too, so it's a little bit better. But the Avatar Prime, for example, the new one is an effective mech also. I mean, you leverage the torso twisting, and you can easily damage a lot of heavier mechs than yourself, and pull them into your teammates while running away. It's quite a satisfying mech to play. Runs a little hot though.
In regard to the most purchased mechs, they seem to be a mixture of the most metagame tryhard mechs and the most noob trappy mechs that are the cheapest version of that chassis.
Mm-hmm.
For example, the LRM Uziel.
Yeah, used effectively, great. Not, well, falls apart.
Yeah, I regularly see noobs taking the Uziel. Which one is that?
It's the Foxtrot.
Yeah, the Uziel Foxtrot. That it's got 30 missiles worth of LRMs, and it's got 2 extra tons. So even though one of its LRM launchers won't reload, it still has quite a bit of staying power when it comes to missiles. It holds way more missiles than something like the LRM-15 Uller. And it can put out more DPS with those LRMs than the Uller can, since LRM-10s reload more quickly than LRM-15s. But unlike that Uller, that where the Uller can shoot those missiles straight, and so it's good up until 20 meters. The minimum range on those inner sphere LRMs just makes that thing a death trap.
Yeah, it has to be played wisely.
Especially since it's almost better later in the game than it is when people are most likely to be able to afford it. Because the point at which it's affordable, it's first affordable, early in the game. Which rank is that? Third rank.
Okay.
Yeah, warrior and corporal. And so that, I think, is when it's coming out the most often, is when someone has decided to. So while it's not the cheapest Uziel, it's the cheapest one. Or yeah, there's one that's cheaper, but it's the cheapest one that has LRMs. And so people get into that when most of their opponents are still playing in fast light mechs and fast mediums. And
You can close the distance so quickly.
right. It has some ability to kite because it does move at 97 kph. That's pretty good for a medium. But
And has improved jump jets.
yeah, but it's not enough to deal with those. It's not enough to deal with those light mechs.
Last ones.
Works pretty well against heavies and assaults, though.
Agreed.
It needs nice open maps too for it to work. And so much of terrain control nowadays is played on maps that have, basically all terrain control, really. There's almost all maps contain at least some portion of it where brawling is important.
Mm-hmm.
And those medium lasers just don't have enough damage. So I'm looking at the Sunny D to see who purchases it the most frequently.
Mm-hmm.
We've got SJ Red, 88 purchases of the Sunny D.
He likes that thing.
I wonder how many Hilo would have if we actually were able to get all his different aliases.
I
into one.
suspect many of the Mechwarrior with a lowercase w are mostly him.
He's got a bunch of them, Mike. I've got the tracking working in beta, but there's too many bugs with it right now to be fully effective. But yeah, my God, does he have a lot of names?
I would not be surprised if he was actually the real most frequent purchaser of the Sunny D.
We'll find out sooner or later. Marauder's very popular.
Oh yeah,
The Marauder has absolutely dominated the heavy mech popularity since it's been introduced.
It's a cool mech. It's effective, fast. It's it's the equivalent of the IS Timberwolf.
In fact, that's the very engine that it has in it. It is the only mixed tech vehicle or asset in the entire game.
Yeah, and it's got the snub nose thumper on it,
Yeah.
which is one of my favorites.
So I'm going to look at some of the biggest spenders to see what they're buying stuff. So there's this guy on here. His name is Rick Hunter, and he spent 63 million C-bills, and all assets used. So you most frequently purchase Osiris Delta.
Yeah, ever since that was changed from the jumping version, was down armored to the current version, added 3 machine guns to it. The previous version had 2 heavy machine guns, I believe. So yeah, it's become a kind of a long-range skirmisher. Lost its jump jets, but it up armored on the and it can put out some pretty nice damage over time. You have to play it wisely, though. You have to play it at range at times, or just run in, run out. But yeah, it's also a money generator. So
Kind of reminds me of the Partisan Bravo if it were half the size and able to actually move.
yeah, exactly that. The racks just Well, tickle me. I love the way that the weapon spins up and sounds. It's a fun mech. It really is a fun mech.
So your second favorite mech is the Marauder Alpha.
Yeah. Guilty.
I wonder if very many other players have a heavy mech as their second favorite.
I don't know,
I'll
but
pull up a few.
it's a fun one, especially in maps that have a vertical component like Zotomir. Getting up on top of the bridges and being at the enemies below, especially when there's a gaggle of them. It's quite satisfying.
Oh my gosh, I'm looking at Rogue One here. His number one most used asset is the Mad Cat Bravo.
Which one's a Bravo again? Is that the one with the Gauss?
Yeah.
Gauss,
Yeah,
4
so-
medium, ER medium lasers, 2 ER large lambs, and enhanced optics.
A very effective mech.
And
Like-
his
And argue that it's even more effective than the Marauder. That's almost very similar to it. It's because it has, I think, it has many more heat sinks in it. We can keep keep a higher rate of fire.
yeah, that Marauder certainly does have heat issues.
Yeah.
And then his second favorite mech is the Uller Foxtrot with the heavy large laser and the streaks.
That's a go-to starter mech.
And then his third choice, this is really curious and quite awesome, I think. It's not awesome, though. It's the Thanatos Gulf. Oh, I think I know what's going on here. So it's the one with the 2 ER large beams, the Gauss rifle, and the LRM-10, and jump jets. I think what's going on there is that if he's playing pure tech and he can't buy the Mad Cat Bravo, he buys the Thanatos Gulf.
I will counter that theory that he can buy the Marauder F, which he has almost the same number of purchases as. It's his fifth most popular. That's the Marauder that's very similar to that Mad Cat that's his favorite.
Aha. So maybe it's a case of if jump jets are good, he goes with Thanatos Gulf, and if jump jets aren't, then he goes with Marauder Foxtrot.
Could be.
So I know some maps, jump jets are just useless. Or not totally useless, but considerably less useful. Let's see, Rask. What's Rask by? Uller Prime, Uller Alpha, Uller Foxtrot.
Rask actually buys the second most light mechs compared to anyone else in the game. The first, of course, is the eponymous Mechwarrior, but he beats out Bear by 150 mechs, and the next closest competition by over 300.
And he's also playing one of my favorite Cougars, which I've somehow just I call it my favorite, and yet it's probably not the one that I've purchased the most. And as time goes on, I'm sure it'll be reflected in the stats, but it's the Cougar Alpha. It has 1 LRM-15, 1 dual SRM-6, and 2 medium pulse lasers with improved jump jets and a laser anti-missile system.
Yep.
It reminds me of the Ryokan Alpha, just with 2 fewer medium pulse lasers.
Yeah, it's an effective mech. Rarely take that one. Sometimes give it another spin.
Yeah, I don't know why I don't see it more often, because it is so flexible, and it works really well in close combat.
Is it up armored at all, or is it just standard armored?
Well, let me take a look. The Alpha, it is down armored.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
So the Prime has 7.5 tons of armor, and it has only 7 tons of armor. Although it is not the lowest. The lowest would be the Bravo or the Gulf, which only have 6.5 tons of armor.
They don't take a beating, that's for sure.
Then you've got just these
Definitely
crazy
SRM one.
variants, like the one that has streak 4s and the heavy medium lasers. That thing has 8.5 tons of armor. That's as much armor as a lot of mediums out there.
I believe that might get a little bit of a change for the next patch. Talk about that, I believe, but is 2 up armored, I think.
What's that?
I think it's 2 up armored.
Yeah, that I know Invictus usually likes to keep the up armoring on assets to about 1 ton, not usually more than a ton plus.
But yeah, we might see a change on that one. Still a fun mech though.
Oh yeah. Most light mech purchases. So Mechwarrior, of course, and then Rask, followed by Bear, and Floodinator, and Wangmauler.
I think it's interesting. I know I may have sounded like I was ragging on Rask a little bit when I said he was the second most light mech purchases. He's also the 4th most heavy mech purchases. So he's clearly doing something with all those light mechs.
Well, he's definitely pressing W most of the time.
Indeed.
Yes. Yeah, I remember in Chaos March that if ever we needed a Berserker rush, we'd send him in first. I mean, hopefully most of us like all up there with him at the same time, but you know, he's the Berserker guy.
Yep.
Most medium mech purchases: Harley Quinn, Mechwarrior. Wow, so Harley Quinn has more purchases than even Mechwarrior?
Indeed.
That's impressive.
I don't know if that's by choice or by skill plateau, but having played against Harley Quinn, I would say it's not by skill plateau.
And then we've got Aurelius Tyr,
Yeah, he likes the
And-
fast mechs.
Erasmus, followed by Rask. I was sort of expecting to see Red there, but I guess maybe he doesn't play quite as much as they do.
Yeah, exactly. But percentage-wise, I'd probably see him in Ryokins a lot.
I said I'm working towards giving a breakdown based on your total purchases, whether you're a light, medium, heavy, or assault pilot. So hopefully I can answer that question as to whether people prefer by their choice breakdown percentage-wise which chassis weight
that's
class
pretty
they're
cool.
in.
Yeah, that'd be nice to see.
I've got all the data. It's just not anywhere anybody can see it.
So here you can tell how much Red likes mechs, because I'm looking at what his purchase stats are. 447 mechs and 1 tank.
I think that's the case for most of SJ. They tend to have an affinity for the legged vehicles.
Well, I must admit, though, your 6 stats really have kind of pushed me to say, hey, let me take a look at these other assets and give other things a spin. And I think it's done that also for some other people. So I think it diversifies some people's choices.
Yeah,
which is always fun.
I would tend to agree. It's definitely started more discussion about chassis and who takes what the most that I've been able to observe, at least in some of the Living Legends Discord channels. And it's pointed me at some assets that are really great that I would have had no idea that they were so good, such as the I believe it's the standard ATM medium laser ER medium laser Cougar. I think it's the Cougar Echo. I just recently started taking that after somebody said that was their go-to crutch Cougar.
Yeah, it's an effective one. It's cheap. It has to be played properly though, otherwise you
Yeah.
can easily get overwhelmed at mid-range.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah, it's one of those ones that it can really put out a lot of damage. It sucks down the coolant like crazy, especially if you're using the jump jets. If it gets caught in close combat, then it just has a real bad day.
Rumbles.
But played correctly, oh my gosh, that thing is a beast. So I'm looking at Red stats, and he actually doesn't play Ryokins that much. At least not anymore. They may be pretty high up on his gosh, where'd his page go? They may be pretty high up on his overall stats purchased, but they're like an order of magnitude lower than the ones he purchases the most often. The most often he's got the Locust 2C, which with all the heavy machine guns, and then the Sunny D, and then the Osiris A, the Solitaire Charlie with the one with Flamers and Mask, and then the masking Cauldronborn G.
Oh yeah, that one's great.
And then
That's
the
one
Owens.
of my favorite heavies.
The Owens A. The ELRM Owens? Huh.
Really?
That is an interesting one.
Well, sometimes he does take the Rio. Is it the G with the
Foxtrot.
ATMs? Or the F, okay.
Yeah, so just looking at Red's playstyle, he has 105 purchases of the heavy machine gun Locust, 88 purchases of the Sunny D, and then only 37 purchases of the Osiris A. So it's very much Locust A into Black Lantern B, which that very much fits his playstyle, run and gun.
Yep. No, it's definitely effective. But that also requires, because both of them are 360 degree assets, you have to know where you're actually fighting. You have to know the terrain, because the worst thing is running backwards. Well, not running backwards, but running and looking backwards, smacking into a wall or a mountain. There goes all your mobility. The other enemy you're fighting jumps with joy and, well, pummels you while you get unstuck. And I think that's happened to everybody more than a few times.
So I'm looking at Hamsters' stats now, and of his top 6, 4 of them are airplanes. Looks like he typically buys the Osiris Prime, and then upgrades to the Sula Charlie.
Now, if you're a good pilot and you can actually make bank on it, then great. But a lot of the times, planes are a detriment to the team, so it's not an easy way to help out the team, and you have to know when to use them, and not lawn dart too many times.
Yeah. One of the things I've found with aircraft is that variant choice, what variant you choose and what's good, is very, very, very narrow, depending on the situation. So if you've got most of the bases captured, and you're looking to eliminate enemies as they fall back from the front line, then you've got a few more options. There's a few different missile boats, some bombers, things like that can really help out. But when your team is on the retreat, there aren't very many planes that are good, and the Sula Charlie is one of them that is good in that situation, because it can help prevent the enemy from taking advantage of your disadvantage by bringing in their own aircraft. Because the Sula Charlie can take out almost anything, given enough time.
We touched on it a little earlier, how I think that the game modes that are most popular tend to hurt some assets. In particular, we touched on LRM boats previously, but I do think that airplanes in general are another victim of the game mode choice of the player base, that airplanes are at a distinct disadvantage simply because it's difficult or impossible in a lot of airplane chassis to actually cap points for your team, which is extremely important in terrain control. Whereas if Team Solaris Arena was a more popular game mode, they might face a little less of the stigma that they seem to.
Whoa, so I'm looking at Poplug, and his purchase stats have Donar Gulf, Donar Bravo, Hawkmoth Gulf, Hawkmoth Delta as his top 4.
Yeah, I very rarely see him in anything other than a VTOL, it feels like. So I feel like that fits. I did not know he liked the Harasser Golf so much. He seems to be one of the few.
Wow. He's purchased it, what, 3 times more.
Then the next closest, yeah.
So I guess it's like he likes to go fast with those VTOLs, and if he wants to go faster, he gets a harasser. Oh, and he's also an aficionado of the Marauder Alpha. I don't remember what. Oh, so yeah, we didn't get to most popular assault mechs.
So the number one most popular assault mech is the Atlas A, Bubbles. It's got 3 Rack 5s, 2 dual SRM4s, and Gekem.
That thing's pretty formidable. I know that it's even better than or it was often considered better than the 4 Rack 5 Fafnir that used to be around.
It remains the most popular Atlas, in spite of being the, I believe, 3rd most expensive one. Or no, 4th. The 4th most expensive Atlas. But it leads the other chassis by quite a ways. It's got a 110 purchase lead on the next most popular, which is the UAC-20 Atlas, the Atlas Golf. The Golf. The Atlas Golf is the second most popular.
That would make sense because it's so cheap.
Indeed, it's the least expensive, and it has a UAC-20 and 2 MRM-30s, so it's still dangerous, even being the second most popular.
It actually only needs a 100 C-bill donation from rank 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. From rank 9, you only need 100 C-bills to get the... And what's the second most popular assault mech?
Second most popular is the Awesome B. That is the 2 UAC-10 4 medium pulse laser variant.
I definitely use that a lot.
Were I capable of getting into the assault tier more reliably, I think I would too. It's only 97,500 C-bills, which is only slightly more expensive than the Awesome C, which is the 3rd most popular assault mech, which has 4 PPCs on it. There's only a 6 purchase difference between those 2 chassis.
Wow. Awesome, bravo. One of the things about that is that if you take a 1,000 C-bill donation, you can afford the extra ammo for it. So, and you said the next most popular was the PPC Awesome. And then what's after that?
So, number 4 is the Mauler Prime. That's 2 LRM-15s, 2 ER large lasers, and 4 UAC-2s. It has about an 80 purchase gap between it and the Awesome C.
What players have purchased it the most?
That is an interesting question, and I can find that out.
Because I honestly...
The top buyers are Optimus Shear, who has 20 purchases. Gemini has 14, and General Awkwardly has 9, as well as Rogue One has 9. Master E420 has 7, as WR Gnome King, and the rest are pretty evenly spread around.
I kind of want to know how they're using it, because I've never had a good experience with that. Well, okay, not never, but I rarely have a good experience with that mech.
I don't often take the Mauler Prime. Usually if I'm taking a Mauler, I have a tendency to take the broadside, just for all of the missiles.
It's a vicious one indeed. What's the most popular tank?
The most popular tank is the Partisan B, with 956 purchases. It has, of course, 4 Rack 2s on it. The second most popular is the APC Prime. No surprises there. The Chevalier Golf comes in 3rd. The Wheat Foxtrot comes in 4th. And the Rommel F comes in 5th.
The Hewitt's on there.
The Hewitt. It is the UAC-2 Hewitt, the Hewitt F. So I guess when people get tired of late game ASF, they break out the Wheat.
Yeah. Good old Huitzilopochtli. Yeah, that was kind of an interesting cluster of tanks. I was not expecting the Partisan Bravo to be at the top. I was thinking it was going to be like one of the Chevys or something, since it's a starting asset.
Well, the Chevy G does come in third, so it's nothing to sneeze at. That one has 3 LBX2s on it and is a starter asset.
What's the second most popular starter asset tank?
The most popular tank is technically the APC, just because it's grouped in there. But the Chevalier Golf, of course, tops that out since it's in the third overall. But the Chevalier Alpha comes in right behind it with 3 small X-pulse lasers. The Chevalier D comes in fourth with the MRM-10 and the light Gauss, and the Chevalier C with the UAC-5 and the large X-pulse laser comes in fifth.
The people really aren't taking advantage of the multipliers on Mithrases and harassers.
It would seem that they are not. If I bump up the number that I'm looking at, the Mithras doesn't start coming in until after the Chevalier Prime, which is in 6th place. So nearly every Chevalier is apparently preferable to the player base to a Mithras, except for the Chevalier Echo, which comes in at 10th place. But the most popular Mithras is the Golf with the HAG 20. The second most popular Mithras is the Mithras B, which you mentioned before, with the heavy medium laser and the 2 heavy small lasers. And the Mithras E comes in 9th place with the UAC-10 and machine guns.
I think most players don't realize how good that multiplier is, and I think a lot of the players that do realize the quality of the multiplier of the Harasser and the Mithras are usually too worried about dying before they can spend their money with those.
Now, that multiplier is a multiplier on the C-Bells generated, correct?
Yeah.
If I recall correctly, C-Bells are proportional to points, so they would be related.
Yes. So it is affected by points are a part of the scoring system used in MWL to determine C-Bill gain and rank progression. That means that the Mithras and the Harasser, they are gaining. Actually, the Harasser's rank level 2 right now. It's the Commando and the Mithras that are both at level 1, and so they have a significant advantage at gaining rank over other assets.
Yeah, I know. I've seen a lot of players swear by starting in a Commando lately. Maybe not quite as many as other assets, but certainly Batuta will tell you that the Commando is the place to start.
I see Bob in the large X-Pulse laser and LBX-5 Harasser a lot. I wonder what the stats say about that.
Which particular assets were you interested in?
Oh, well,
The Harasser Echo. Yeah, that's his most popular asset on at least the 12ER servers. He's bought 3 times as many of those or twice as many of those as anything else.
A lot of people don't realize that like the ticket values on those are really low too, and that means that when you die, it's not that bad for your team. I know that like when I take a Mithras, and if there's an enemy mech that I know I can kill, but I'll probably die doing so, I go for it, because I'm going to lose 1 ticket, and they're going to lose a bunch, and I'm going to get more points for it than they are.
Well, it's crazy to think that it's more expensive to die in battle armor than for your team ticket-wise than some assets, which are all those single-ticket assets.
Yeah, it's kind of a situation where the game penalizes noobs for ejecting, which is really cool to watch and really cool to do. It's something that a lot of players have always wanted to do, is eject in the middle of a game, just like they do in the trailers. they really want to do that, but they don't know how much it hurts their team. What are the most popular aircraft?
So our most popular ASF is the Rusalka D. That's the heavy PPC, 2 MRM-30, 2 high explosive bombs. I could believe that because that's one of my favorite mid to late game ASF. The Visigoth G, the Gravedigger, with an ERPPC, 2 air UAC-10s, and 2 cluster bombs, comes in second. In third place, we have the Corsair H, which of course has the NARC, a medium X pulse laser, 2 light Gauss rifles, and 2 laser-guided bombs. The fourth place goes to the Avar B, which is 3 ATMs, 2 medium pulse lasers. And fifth place goes to the Avar C, which is a heavy large laser, 2 ER small lasers, and 2 LRM-10s, with an additional laser-guided bomb.
Wow. And does the I don't know if I heard, does the Rusalka Echo show up anywhere on there?
The Rusalka Echo is not in the top 10. Let me expand my list a little bit. The Rusalka Echo is 25, 24, 23, 22, 21, 20, is the 19th most popular aircraft.
And yet it's the most the one I use the most often.
Let's see if you top the pie chart for that one. Indeed you do, with more than twice as many purchases as anyone else. The infamous Mechwarrior and Mechwarrior 1 are also in the top 5 purchases for that. Really makes you think.
It requires you to click the mouse 4 times to get all 4 volleys off on it, and so if you actually want to use the air LRM-20, you have to be willing to come in pretty close to your target.
Right. Not to mention, what is the minimum range on a RAC-5? Is it 500 meters?
Oh, it's actually more like 850 meters. It's way out there.
Oh, okay.
So I think one of the reasons why, at least on my top assets used, it shows the Rusalka Echo as number 3 and the Sula Charlie as number 5. It's not so much that I fly a lot. It's more so that when I do fly, there aren't very many things that I pick from. The variety of ground assets that I use is very broad, but the variety of air assets that I use is just super narrow.
I'd say I'm the same way with ASF assets, even as a much more novice flyer. I definitely have a more established chain of assets that I work my way through. Although I have varied it up a little bit, expanding into some of the Corsairs, or if you're playing pure tech, you kind of have to mix it up. But I have a tendency to go Sparrowhawk. Oh, what's the one with the laser guided bomb and the NARC? Is that the F? Might be the F. And then the Corsair, the Ostrogoth Corsair, followed by the MRM Rusalka. And I kind of stick to that because I know how to fly those. Because it's much easier to not lawn dart if you're used to how it handles.
Yeah, what's the most popular VTOL?
The most popular VTOL is the Donar G. That is the UAC-10 Donar. It's got not too many more purchases than second place, which is the Hawkmoth D, which is a personal favorite of mine, VTOL-wise, which is 2 SRM-6s and 2 light PPCs.
Nice. Well, I think that is all the questions I have. So, thank you so much for committing so much of your time.
Absolutely, it was a pleasure.
I would like to thank Timothy Seals for our opening theme and Shivoxy for our closing theme. This has been Returning to Base, a Mechwarrior Living Legends podcast.